Thanks to Gwyneth Doland and Secretary of State Toulouse Oliver. Let's get into some of those topics with our Line Opinion panel. This week we're joined by two former state senators, Democrat Dede Feldman and Republican Diane Snyder. We want to welcome Algernon Damasa from the Las Cruces Sun News back to the show. Thank you all for being here. All right, the Secretary of State made it clear the main objectives of this package of reforms are increasing access while maintaining integrity. Now, Senator Feldman, let's start with your initial impressions of the proposals. And would they accomplish those objectives?
Well, first, just let me say, in full disclosure, that Common Cause New Mexico is one of my clients, and they are in full support of this bill.
Okay.
But my opinions are my own. This is great timing for this bill because, with the anniversary of January 6th, and what's happening around the country to curtail voting rights and override the will of the electorate in many states by legislators. This is another expansion of of opportunities for voting and, in fact, the franchise, as well as strengthening election integrity and security. So it has been pared down from its original proposal, but it still includes a lot of great things that facilitate voting for folks that have had bureaucratic hassles before, namely felons and people who can't quite complete their vote by mail thing, or can't register automatically at a state agency. This facilitates that. It creates a permanent, this is something that I like. It creates a permanent list. If you want to always receive an absentee ballot, for example, you could get it by requesting once rather than time after time after time, which creates bureaucratic hassles at the clerk's offices. So they used to have this, I think, in Bernalillo County for all senior citizens over 65.
Okay.
And another thing that's in there that I think is really great for candidates is electronic signature submission. And they're doing this now in Bernalillo County, where instead of paper petitions that have to be submitted to the county clerk and verified through the clerk's office, you can submit it online. Individuals can submit their signatures online for certain candidates, and then they can be verified much more easily with voter registration. So there are a lot of really good streamlining things here. A couple of things have been taken out. The straight party line voting has been taken out, as have some of the early voting and absentee counting absentee voter votes after the election, and extending the early voting to Sundays was also taken out, which I would have preferred that they continue through Sunday. I think it would be more convenient. And the idea here is to increase voter turnout.
That's right.
To allow more people to vote safely and legitimately, and I think that's a really worthwhile path.
Let's take a couple of cuts at this that are in this proposal. Algernon, the big talker, of course, you've been hearing of this a lot, is lowering the voting age to age 16. Some obvious questions which Gwyneth brought up. But do you agree with the Secretary at all that making this an option for older teens is a natural progression in expanding those voting rights?
Well, I'm not going to take a position on whether this proposal passes or not, but I think it raises some really interesting and worthwhile questions about who is a citizen. What are the grounds for granting someone a voice? 16-year-olds work. In fact, people younger than that can enter the workforce. They can pay taxes. They're, of course, subject to the decisions that grown-ups make, the so-called grown-ups. 16-year-olds of my acquaintance have enrolled in junior EMT programs. They participate in dual credit programs where they're actually starting college while they're still in high school.
Right.
I think that it's interesting when these conversations come up, and what are the first images of 16-year-olds that you hear about? Do people bring up the lazy 16-year-old stereotype who doesn't want to do anything and can't be trusted to make decisions about who their city councilor is? Mm-hmm. Or do you get people talking about the 16-year-olds they know who are capable, functioning, participating members of the society who deserve to be heard?
Let me ask you a question, Algernon, and Senator Snyder, you can pick up on this as well. Is there not a danger, however, when you have someone with that little life experience under their belt, that they're susceptible to manipulation, they're susceptible to, the kind of manipulation that happens in politics? You don't really know a lot of things, be able to parse your way through lies and this and other thing. I mean, honestly, can you really do that at 16 years old?
Are they more or less likely to storm a Capitol building if their candidate loses? These are all, manipulation and believing propaganda. I mean, what is the magical threshold where we imagine people are impervious to these influences?
Good point.
And I think really the conversation isn't how, what year of birth is printed on your birth certificate. I think it's really how do we prepare people from childhood through adulthood in terms of the foundational ideas of how our society is supposed to work, what our values are, what our understanding is of civic institutions and procedures. And as a 16-year-old incapable of understanding all of that, some probably are not prepared or interested or curious, but in terms of being able to look around their world and report what they see, and perhaps tick a box for a candidate, I don't know that a 16-year-old is cognitively incapable of participating in that if they want to.
Right.
But honestly, I think civic preparation as well as voter participation is an issue that spans age.
Interesting points there. Senator Snyder, the Secretary of State's office also released a study on voter attitudes after the 2020 go. She says the rhetoric surrounding security did add to concerns among voters, but that trust in the system is still pretty high. Is there more to be done to assure the public that, we have a safe and effective system, or is just who she is and the party she represents just going to have a natural, little conflict point there on these things?
I think several points along those lines. I think there's always going to be partisan conflicts. I think that's always going to be anytime you change a law. One of the things that kind of struck me, just a couple things in the bill, we mentioned the age.
Right.
As you recall, the reason we lowered the age from 21 to 18 was because of the Vietnam War.
Right.
And if we could send our young men at that time off to die in the swamps of Vietnam, then they should have the right to vote. Well, I don't exactly see a comparison or a similar kind of occasion right now. It really brings up, though, to me, how do you, as a candidate, how do you reach those young people? And one of the great programs we have, and I hope they still do it in the legislature, is they have a program for you from the National Conference of State Legislators where you can go into your schools and talk about the elective process, how a bill passes. Well, if you're going in and doing that, is that not campaigning? And I don't want that to go away. I think that is so important. And I think the civics education that Algernon mentioned, incredibly important. And so I'm kind of going, well, if we do the first step first, if we go back and we make sure that we have civics classes, that we teach our young people about the process, it's our responsibility to educate them. I think before we move the vote down and just throw them out in it, I know lots of 16-year-olds that I would trust completely, but I have known a few, as Maggie said, a few that older that I wouldn't want voting at 16. The other thing is the felons. It says until they have completed their whatever.
Incarceration, right? Mhm.
Yeah, incarceration. Does that they are completed their service, what they're supposed to do? Where do you throw in parole? A lot of felons stay on parole for many
right.
years after, or not years, but some time.
Sure.
There's also the issue: what address do they use? While they're going through the parole and period, if they're in a halfway house or something.
Right.
So I think there are just little things that go along with this that haven't been answered in my mind.
Mhm.
I think that we always go with the big items when we're discussing a bill, and that's what you see covered. But one of the things that's in Senate Bill 6, and there are two big election bills in the Senate, 6 and 8. Well, in 6, it does away. Let me rephrase that. Right now, the monitors and oversight people are appointed or recruited and appointed by their respective political party. Indeed, if I'm not using the right term for that, let me know. But this bill would take it out of their hands, and it would become, you would have to go through the Secretary of State's office, as I understand it, to be able to provide that oversight. Well, that's kind of defeating the purpose of what you're supposed to be doing. And they're there, both the Democrats and Republicans. And I think we have had some Greens in a couple of years. But what happens when we have big bills where there are big issues, there are so many little things that we miss going along.
That's right.
I learned.
Senator, can I ask
Sure.
Senator, our other senator with us to react to that, and we're going to move on, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I think what's actually in the bill, let me just clarify a little bit,
Okay.
Please.
is that it requires training by the Secretary of State for these poll workers, and it requires disqualification of poll workers who have been abusive or problematic in the past.
Oh, okay.
Interesting points
Thank
there.
you.
Guys, you
Yeah.
can watch our full interview with Secretary of State Toulouse Oliver on our website at newmexicoinfocus.org or stream anytime on the PBS Video app.